Yep. And there we go. Okay, recording has started. So, all right, we have a new site, everyone, which is very exciting. So this went live this morning. It went, well, sorry, live for us to be able to manipulate and do things to it. But we have our current site still. So what happened was eCatholic cloned our current website and applied this new style to it. We have a little over a week to make changes, make sure that everything is going to work with this new style before it goes live. And then because it's an instantaneous change, so our domain is almost like a movable track. You have our old site and our new site. Domain is currently pointing to our old site. And then on the morning of November 20th, they're going to change the destination of that domain to our new site. So there's no like rendering or anything like that that we have to use to do on site changes. So it'll be instantaneous on the morning of the 20th. So just keep that in mind for right now. We technically have two sites that we're maintaining. So what you do on the old site isn't going to transfer to the new site. What you do to the new site isn't going to transfer this morning. Yeah, yeah. Um, so, so yeah, so just keep that in mind. We wanted to make it as quick as possible, but also to make, allow us to be as thorough as possible as well. So, not till the 20th. Yeah. Feast of Christ the King. Um, cool. So after this training, I will send you an email with the link to this site because you can see it on your browser, on your computer. You can also see it on your phone as well to see how things are going to change. And yeah, you can manipulate things as you need to. So I am super excited on how this turned out. The navigation came out really well. Yeah. And then we now have this little introductory space where we can help people identify who they are and point them in the direction of ministries and opportunities for men and women. We can add groups to this, like young adults and things like that. We have like these little testimonial blocks. We have full width buttons now that have these um, nifty animations. We have our temporary upcoming events that just uses our native eCatholic module, which we're using now because we're not switching over to ministry platform until January at the earliest. So we'll maintain our use of the eCatholic module until that time. But they have some really great stuff in line for us once we make that switch. And then our expanded bottom. And then there is one other. This is our home page. Yeah. Yeah. Just like our current site is. I have to redo all of those images to match this new size. So that's why it's a stagnant. Yep. So we'll talk about more of that in a little bit. There is one thing that I did want to show you, but I am, let's see. Let's do this. While you do that, log out. We're gonna log back in. Admin here, site. Okay, let's see this. And then design. Okay, this is what I'm really excited about. So I previewed this, it was static. So this is the new ministry pathway. So whenever we're walking people through like how you go through RCIA or marriage prep, there's like this awesome timeline that walks people through that so they can visualize that step-by-step process. And we can stack, these on top of each other to infinity practically. So we're not limited to just like a 4-step process. And it looks pretty sweet on mobile too. Yes, I will take the Latin part out. Yeah. So I was just so excited about that, what they did for that. Okay, so let me log back in. So one of the things that we did as a point of preparation for the new site is we readjusted our user groups in the site. So that way your sitemap is a little more focused and you're not overwhelmed by all of the different options that are there. You still have access to the vast majority of the functions that many of you had as administrators, but there may be some tweaks. We just kind of wanted to kind of reset everything as to how it should be. Whenever you look at like other organizations, there are a very small group of administrators because there are a lot of settings that you can mess with in that. And you just want to have that as focused as possible. And then you have larger cascading user groups. So that way there's just the right flow to getting the information on the website and things like that. If you run into any like features that you don't have now as publishers, let me know. This is not by no means like a hard and fast rule, but we just kind of want to reset everyone to where they should be for now. And then once we realize that there is a need to like add more people, we'll do that. I'm happy to do that. So all that is to say, again, if you run into any like features that you used to be able to manipulate and you can't anymore, just let me know, and we'll fix that. So so I'm logged in now as a publisher, so you can see what things are going to look like on your end. Because it may have been a long time since you've kind of gone through the interface of eCatholic, I wanted to start with that. So here on all of the pages, you'll have this white menu right here that's the solution menu. I like to refer to it more as like the site menu, as opposed to some of our other areas. You have, here's my communications. So if I were to go to a page that I have editing rights, you also have a menu down here at the bottom. That's a page menu. So top is your site, bottom is your page. So keep that in mind. I did not need to do that. Okay, so here on the far left is how you switch from your website to your payments. There are only a couple of people that are using the eCatholic payments, and that's the desire of the finance office, especially as we're switching over to Give Central. So you really shouldn't need to go over here unless you're already using the eCatholic payment module. Edit the website is the tab where you do the bulk of your work in the eCatholic site. Next up, you have the sitemap. So you'll see our main navigation here. It's all kind of a cloudy gray, washed out kind of look, which means that you don't have access to any of those bits and pieces. But if you scroll either down or to the right, I'm not sure why my communications portion is appearing below it. It should appear to the right. That'll be one of my punch list items for eCatholic. But you should see your respective sections where you have the ability to move things around. You see that things are a little more colorful, a little more vibrant. So that represents the areas that you are able to manipulate. And now with this, again, with the new use of our user groups, you don't see other ministry areas that you shouldn't have access to. So it's way more focused now. So that's our site map. We'll go over that. Double check that I'm tracking. Okay. Interface sitemap. Okay, so while we're here, let's just talk about a couple of the icons that you're going to see here. You have these gray pages down like right here under social media links. So that means that the page is not visible by navigation. So the only way to get to that page is by the link, the URL. Or if you have like a button on a page that leads people to that. So not appearing on the site navigation means that it's not going to appear like right here. Or if you're on a page that has a left-hand menu, or now on our news site, it won't appear here on this secondary navigation either. So that's visible and invisible pages, or in terms of navigation. We'll talk about how you switch between those two here in a little bit. You see there's this gray little no icon, the circle with a slash. So that in this case, it means that it doesn't appear on our navigation, and it also is disabled. So the only way to see that page is to be logged into the back end of the website. So no users are going to be able to see it. It also won't appear in your search in the search results. So I had to backtrack a little bit. If something is not in the navigation, they can access it through the search through the search results. So keep that in mind. So if you have like a page, like for right now, Christmas and even Advent right now, I'm not quite ready to release those out in the wild. I've already created those pages, but they're set to disabled. So nobody can access them unless they're logged into the site.
It's not ready to put it on the site.
Essentially, yeah. Or if you have like a ministry, and I guess this is kind of in the same vein, but if you have a ministry that kind of is on hiatus right now, and you don't necessarily want to recreate the page down the road. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With COVID, I did.
Mhm.
Then I went in and I changed it to fewer real ministry and then I reactivated. Okay, that makes
Yep.
sense.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, and then you're not, okay. Yeah, the tree, your stuff, okay, got it.
Yep. Yeah, and then I don't have any examples of it in use on the navigation, but you see down here on the bottom, there's a um, secure page little piece that has a lock. So that means that in order for a visitor to our website to see the page, they would need to input a password that you set up. There's no user ID required for that. It's just a very simple password. And you can change the passwords later if you need to. So a good use of this is for like your core teams, one of your ministry leaders. They can have access to that secure information, but the general public doesn't necessarily have access to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. No. Mm-mm. Yeah, so that is one of the quirks. I was going to talk about that a little bit in the creating pages section of this conversation, but yeah, the only place to add a secure page is here through the sitemap, and unfortunately, you can't go back and forth between a secure and a non-secure page. Yep, exactly. And then the last of the icons is this little link. We have them, I have it like here in my archive, and then our new site navigation is all based off of links because now all of the actual content are these new columns. So they appear on our sitemap as a page. And they'll work almost like a page in the front end on your navigation, but really it's a hyperlink, and so you'll set the destination in the settings, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. But I just kind of wanted to go over all those different things. The other point about the sitemap is that you can have up to 4 levels deep in terms of sub pages. So, excuse me. So you'll see that these little pieces, these little page blocks are kind of nested. So on top, at the very top, I have communications. And within that, I have analytics, artwork. You come down to the bulletin. you see now that within the bulletin, there's archives, content submissions. So I can go one more layer. So you have this, it's normally blue when it's visible, but because it's not showing in our navigation, it's gray. Then you have green, then you have purple, and then the last is like this yellow gold. You have this little navigator here on the right to see all of those different levels, or to hide, subpages. So you can go as far as 4 pages deep. So that's really helpful for when you're kind of organizing things for that right-hand secondary navigation. You can have those cascading options. So that way the overall list doesn't become super long, and you can help develop this intuitive information. Well, no, it would mostly be on that right-hand side menu. I mean, that would initially be the first place to go to. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you would initially get to it through these options here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Julie. No worries. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 Mhm. Cool. Okay. So within each of these actual page tiles, you have a couple of different options. So you have the gear, which will open up the pages settings, and we're going to go through these tabs a little bit later. You can also click on this little magnifying glass, which will open that page in a new tab. So keep that in mind that it is a new tab. And if for some reason you were to then go to the sitemap and make other changes, this sitemap is now old. So if you were to hit save, you would get a little error message saying that your token is expired. So just keep in mind that if you go to a page via the sitemap, it's going to open it up in a new tab. That can be kind of confusing when you're kind of doing this over and over again. So my best suggestion is if you make any changes to the sitemap in terms of its organization, and it's as simple as drag and drop. I mean, and if you need to nest something into another section, you just drop it onto the tile that you want it to be nested under. So you make those changes, you hit save, and then I would just open the sitemap again and then go to that page and then close out the old tab that you were on. That's kind of the best way to navigate using that sitemap. So that's a magnifying glass, and then you can delete pages. It'll give you a confirmation prompt once you hit save. And then just keep in mind that you cannot delete pages if there are sub pages under it. So you had to delete all of the sub pages first. If I wanted to get rid of this bulletin page, I would have to get rid of all of these purple tiles or move them to another location first, and then I can delete the bulletin section. Yeah, it's a little safeguard. Yeah, we're just getting rid of it. Nobody reads it. It's pointless. But yeah, nice little safeguard to make sure that you inadvertently don't delete stuff. Okay, so that's the sitemap. I'm gonna go ahead and discard all that. The question mark. Mhm. Yeah, it's a poor label. I don't know why you Catholic use those terms, but yeah, you can exit that. Yeah. Yeah. So the question mark sends you to the eCatholic Help Center, which has a bunch of great articles. Just keep in mind that we have some very special functionality because of the things that we asked for. So they're not always going to have all the questions. So that's when I would help you with some things, or we'll get eCatholic involved in getting some of the things that we need to do. But for some of the basic needs, this help center can be really, really helpful. We're just going to get rid of that. Okay, and then Then we have the notification area. So this is now really helpful for those of you who have logged in and as admins, there were 120 some pages that need publishing. Now that we've moved everyone around, this notification area is only going to show you your pages that need publishing. So this should be really helpful for you in terms of getting those. The goal is to not have anything in the publishing queue. Unless there's a reason for it. Like if you've made changes now and you don't need that to go live until next week, there's a way you can schedule that publishing move. So ideally you wouldn't want to necessarily, hold it in there. But yeah, the end goal is to have a zero item publishing queue. So hopefully now that you have just your section to worry about, we can achieve that. Because I know it's kind of daunting to go through 120 some requests. So yeah, that's the queue. And then lastly is your personal settings. In the user preferences, this is where you change your password if you ever need to do that. Just wanted to touch on that. Okay, and then before I go any further, there were a couple of terms that I kind of wanted to define for y'all, so that way we're kind of speaking the same language. So whenever I refer to a user, a website user, I'm talking about anybody who has access to the back end of the website. So staff members and ministry leaders, because we use the website to communicate to our community. Site visitors are those who only have access to the front end, or even those of us who are not logged into the site. We need to know when mass is or something. Then we would be a visitor because we're visiting the website to learn something or to find something. So there's those two terms. In terms of what you see on an actual page, there are two terms that I generally use. It's either copy, which refers to text on a page that is aimed at getting somebody to take a particular action, versus content is just information or text to just provide information. Not necessarily, it's not aimed at it's not necessarily aimed at getting somebody to take a particular action. So part of the reason why I wanted to make that distinction is those two terms have just been ingrained in me, in my background, but also those terms are in existence because it helps us keep in mind the end goal, whether or not, no worries, whether this is meant to, get somebody to do something or to provide that information. The other reality is, like with copy, you want to try to keep that as short and as quick as possible, versus content, you can elaborate more, you can provide context and things like that. But when you're asking somebody to do something, you want it to be super quick. So just a couple of points of reference for that. Any questions thus far? No. Okay. So now, what I've done for those of you who've just joined us, I was going over this top menu, which I usually call the site menu. Now we're going to just kind of briefly talk about the page menu, which is at the bottom. First item on here is your content tray. So you have all of these different categories and modules that you can add to your pages. These are all the core items. You have some great add-ons for those of you who have access to payments and forms. That's where we do that. Everybody has access to images and videos. And then you have social embed, things like that, and then tons of great Catholic modules that are available to us as well. Now, with one of the more recent updates, all of the modules are going to be present at all times. But if you ever see an item here that's grayed out, it means that it can't be added to your page. And it gives you a little reason why, like in this case, no sections on the page allow for this module type. So if you're hitting a wall with any of those modules, look for those little cues that help you troubleshoot why that can't go there. So that's your content tray. If you want to add a page to your a sub page to this area or to this page, you can do so easily by using this add sub page, and it'll bring up your normal add page dialog box. So rather than dragging and dropping a page in your sitemap, if this is where you want that sub page to reside under, you can go ahead and do that right here. If you have a page that you want to copy the overall layout of, you can do that using the copy page. Again, it'll let you know, or it'll bring you through the normal dialog box, but it also lets you know that or some of the modules that involve other pieces of the website won't necessarily be duplicated. So there might be some work that you have to do to associate all of those little bits. So an example of that would be like your events. So eCatholic builds out all these pages and associates like a particular event page with, in our, maybe like a liturgy page. And a great example is like our upcoming Advent stuff. So we might have our Advent stuff on our homepage and under communications and under liturgy. Because of the way that the copy pages magic works, it won't necessarily be automatically associated. So just keep that in mind. But the overall dialogue works the same way. You can delete pages from here as well. Again, just keep in mind that if you have any sub pages, you can't delete that page without deleting all of your sub pages first. So, and then we get to the little gear again, and that brings up your page settings. And so this is where I wanted to kind of walk you through these options here. So you have a navigation name, page name, which may seem similar to each other, but the big difference is navigation name is going to appear on either, well, we don't really have access to the drop-down menu like we used to, but it's mostly concerned with that right-hand sub menu now. So the reason why they broke that out to be different than the page name is for brevity, because you don't want to necessarily have a 15-word page title ever, but for exaggeration, like you don't want a super long page title in your navigation menu, because you want that to be as quick and easily consumable as possible so people can get where they need to go as quickly as possible. So that's why they're different. And then your page name can be longer, but in general, you want to keep that as quick and simple as possible as well. One thing that I cannot stress enough is that every page needs a page name. We can turn off that page name if you want it, if you don't want it to appear, but please, 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 every page needs a page name. So again, our page name is going to, let me get to a good example here. So I believe here. So page name is going to appear right here on the header image. Navigation name is going to appear here. So in the event that you want something to be, again, as truncated as possible for a navigation, they separated those two out for you. Now, when you create a new page, you'll see that eCatholic is going to pre-populate all of those things for you, but you do have the ability to change those out if you want to. They don't necessarily have to be all the same.
Is navigation always going to be on the right column?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Now that we've switched our navigation menu to only be links, yeah, it really is only affecting that right-hand sub navigation. Good question. Okay, so we were walking through these page settings. So again, the reason why we need page names are a couple of reasons. One, for those who need help reading things on computers, they use some kind of a screen reader. Those pieces of technology rely on page names to help the user understand where they are, where the visitor is. In terms of the site. Secondly, it helps our navigation, so our internal navigation. So whenever you're dealing with the publishing queue, if you don't have a page name on there, it's going to just show up as a little blank, and you won't be able to click on that page, and you won't know what page you're dealing with. So that's important. And then the third reason, is for tabs. So you'll see that right here on the tab, it says the bulletin. That is populated by the page name. So this helps for that nasty natural occurrence that happens when you suddenly have like 15 tabs open. If you didn't have a page name on there, all I would say is St. Thomas More Catholic Church. And if somebody's trying to figure out where they were, 3 tabs ago, and they don't have that page name, that process has become a little more difficult. Now, they just have to flip through tabs, but I mean, our goal is to make this as easy and as seamless as possible. So page names, super, super, super important. And again, we can turn that off if you want to. So I mentioned earlier in the site navigation, or when we were looking through the sitemap, we can disable a page, which again means that the only way to see that page is to be logged into the back end of the site. It's as simple as flipping between these two options here. So that's in your page settings. And then displaying it on navigation is again as simple as a toggle on this basic page of your site, of your page settings. So that image that you see here, we have the resurrectifix from the sanctuary. That's kind of our general image, unless you have something predefined for your page. And if you wanted to change that out, you do that through the advanced tab right here under page image. And it gives you the dimensions for that image as well. So we'll talk about how you use that information in our Canva bootcamp next week. Not on our share drive, but if you want to write this down, unsplash.com and cathopic.com. Unsplash. So this is where I usually go. All of these photos are high quality, super high quality, and most of their photos are royalty free. So that means that we don't have to pay to use them, and we don't necessarily have to cite where we got those photos. We can use them as we need to. They are also virus free, which is always very helpful. They just released their Unsplash Plus offerings. So these photos you do have to pay for. You'll see like the Unsplash watermark on top of it and a little unlock button. But the rest of them you just download for free and it's there for you. Yeah, we're going to go to that in a little bit. The last thing I wanted to say is even if you just put in Catholic, there are a ton of great Catholic photos in here. So this is one of the places that I usually go to. But a relatively new service that just came out is Cathopic, CATHOPIC.com. This is also very similar to Unsplash. They have a lot of photos that are free for use, but then you also do have some that are behind a paywall that we have to use. The difference is with Unsplash, you don't have to have an account to download those. You can download to your heart's content, but with Cathopic, you do have to create an account. But again, the majority of their pictures are free. So these are the two places that I would go for stock photography. Okay, so there's that. So like I said, we can turn off that page title if you don't want to see it there for some reason. You see that the bulletin just disappeared right there. That was right here under page title. So if you don't want it, we can turn it off, but the page title, we need every page to have a page name. Page description. This is for search engine optimization. Basically, you can put a section of text out for search engines like Google or Bing or whatever you have to kind of curate for the search results. Search engine optimization is a science all on its own. I would say like if you have like a page that has a lot of like church jargon, like a lot of acronyms and things like that, using this little field to kind of help provide context for the search engines can help people that aren't necessarily immediately connected to St. Thomas More find the information that they're looking for. That's all that's all I can really say about it. Again, it's a science of its own. But it can be helpful in some cases. One thing that I didn't talk about at this point was our alias. So an alias refers to anything that appears after the last slash on our URL. So in this case, the bulletin would be considered an alias. Whenever you create a page, an alias is going to be generated by the eCatholic system that matches your settings. So again, I kind of demoed that here. As I type, it creates both all the navigation name, page name, and the page alias. You can change all three of these independently. And I say that because ideally you want your page alias to be as short as possible, because I have to think about those people that are encountering our URLs in a print media and now have to try to type all of that out. And the longer your page aliases, the harder that becomes and the more opportunities to have a typo and things like that. So it's best practice when you're creating your new pages to automatically try to make that as short as possible. One of the tactics that I use is to try to just create the keyword or find a keyword that makes sense. And I'll test that on another browser window. One of the general best practices that I use is to almost always have an incognito mode or a private mode browser window open. So I use Chrome a lot. So they use the term incognito mode. And so that means that all of the sites that you would normally be logged into are not so, because it's not tracking any of your habits and things like that or actions that you're taking on in incognito. So this is a super easy way to see how things are going to appear on the front end as long as the page is published. But I would normally go to an incognito mode um, page, and I would just start testing aliases. So whenever you hit this 404 page, that means that alias is available. And it isn't currently being taken up. If you end up using an alias that is already in use, eCatholic is just going to automatically add a -1 or a -2 and keep the number going. I personally don't like the -1s. I'm not going to make it a hard and fast rule to get rid of them, but just keep that in mind that that's where those generally come from. So you can easily just test to see if an alias is available by going to an incognito mode and typing that in. And the 404 means that it's actually available for you. So the reason why I went through that whole long explanation is because you can apply alternate aliases if you need to. So this is a helpful tool when there might be different terms that somebody uses to get to a page, or a particular ministry might be known by both the full name and an acronym. So a good example of this is the Call to Be Mom, what was formerly MOYC. They wanted to use Call to Be Mom in their fullness, but we created an alternate alias, CTBM, their acronym, that sends them to that page. So we're using both, but it's set to that full alias, and we have that short alias kind of getting people in a roundabout way to that page, and it's much simpler when you're typing it in from a bulletin or what have you. Yep. So yeah, alternate aliases can be super helpful. This can also be another use case for this is if you have a page that needs to, a URL that needs to be kind of mobile. So up to a couple of months ago, we had a digital version of the evening prayer booklet. So Wednesday nights we have evening prayer in the Adoration Chapel, and we provided these booklets online. But from week to week, the prayers change, and we weren't at a place where we could each week make those changes. We had to plan those out in advance. So we created all of the individual pages for all of those weeks, but we had a movable alias. So on week 1, Vespers would be assigned to week 1, and next week we would move that alternate alias to week 2 and week 3. So that way, as things progress through the timeline, you get people where they need to go without having to reassign aliases and things like that. Using those alternate aliases can be really helpful. So yeah, that's that. Social. So on Facebook, whenever you add a URL to a Facebook post, and actually Twitter does this as well, it pulls up a very brief preview of that page. eCatholic has a technology within the system that is going to pre-populate some of that content based off of some kind of site-wide attributes. If you want to be very specific about your pages, you can do that within this social tab. I know social media is kind of that. We haven't really gone into that a whole lot, so I don't imagine you're going to be using it a whole lot right now, but I did want to let you know that that was available. And that can be a really helpful tool when you are promoting things on social media, because it helps people understand what they're going to once they click there. And it can increase the click-through rate, which is kind of one of those metrics that we use for social media. And then, as I talked about during the brief run through of the new site, there are 2 kinds of layouts to our interior pages. You have the default layout and you have sections layout. So the default layout is a key characteristic of that is the fact that this right-hand menu is visible on the page. So that is a key indicator of a default layout. Sections layout do not have that right-hand menu. Again, section layouts help you present information in a more dynamic manner. We'll talk about those sections here in a little bit, but you toggle between those 2 here under this tab. And this is one of those things that you can jump back and forth from to and from if you so choose. And then lastly, eCatholic creates a QR code for almost all of the pages on our site. So you can download that QR code straight from the page settings here. So we don't need to mess with other QR code solutions. We do have them available, but eCatholic does a lot of that legwork for us. Any questions on that, on those tabs or those settings? Cool. Let me just make sure that I got through all those. Copy and social, okay, delete. Okay, then let's talk about creating pages. So if you are on a page that needs a sub page, again, you can use this button here. Alternatively, you can, in your sitemap, create pages by dragging these tiles onto the areas that you want them. And you can add subpages by just dragging it onto the appropriate tile. As soon as you let go of the cursor, it'll bring up your create page dialog box. You'll fill in those 3 fields, and then go ahead and just do that for the sake of the example. And you see now that a new page tile has been created. You won't actually be able to go to that page until you hit save. And it'll ask you if you really want to do that. It'll work its magic. and that new page has been created. So you will have to open the sitemap up again and go to it there, and it created a page for you. Well, no, in this case, since I dragged and dropped it right to the top of the navigation, it appeared there. But if I were to drag that tile on top of the bulletin, it would have been a nested or sub page. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the only way to add secure pages is to drag and drop from the sitemap. And again, you cannot go back and forth between those two. So one, I did want to kind of briefly go through a couple of those. So when you drag a secure page, there will be an additional field here to set that password if you want. And you'll hit save. We're gonna save that as well. And this time we're gonna go to that page. Once you go to the settings, oh no, I'm sorry, it's not in the settings. Here under your oh, am I still on there? There we go. Okay, once you're on a secure page, there is an additional icon here with a little lock. You press that and that's where you can change your password, or you can find out what that password has already been set to. So if you lose track of those, keep in mind that you don't have to reset them. So yeah. What's that? So that would be for like your staff. If you had like secure information that your staff needed to know, but you didn't necessarily need the parents. Or if you need your registered parents to know secure information, that's a place that they can go. Which is mhm. Yeah. And then just keep in mind that it's a universal password. It's not assigned to specific people. So yeah. And then if you create subpages underneath that, they would need to have that password for any subpages. If you drag and drop another secure page under another secure page, that creates a separate password for that. So if you needed to separate information out for your teachers versus your teacher assistants, that's how you could do that while creating that navigation. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, super simple creating passwords. And again, can't stress it enough. All pages need page names. And then it's a best practice to try to create as short as of a page name as possible. I'm sorry, page name, but also that alias specifically. So let's talk about your modules. So whenever you create a page, it's automatically going to go to your default layout. So you can drag and drop your modules from the add content. Again, you can see that that in this case, some of the modules that are available on other pages aren't in this case. So it's as simple as just dragging and dropping. There'll be a green shadow there that shows you where that module is going to end up. You can toggle each module has a title and a subtitle that are available. So you can turn those on and off by clicking these buttons right here. And then down at the bottom, you'll have your text area. Yeah, so it's as simple as dragging and dropping things. Well, in terms of bolding, you can still do that because that's a helpful tool in terms of drawing and making an emphasis. So bolding is still good. Sizing is what the biggest thing that we want to move away from. Yeah, don't. Yeah, And so that brings up a great question. So if you create your content or your copy in some other solution like Word, or if you're pulling something from a flyer, if you were to automatically, or if you were just to copy and paste that, it's going to carry a lot of that formatting with it, which is not the best situation we want to find ourselves in. I'm trying to think of an example that I can show you. Let's just go to, we'll go to the diocesan site. And we'll go to, oh, that's the wrong tab. I got rid of that. Okay, so I'm just going to rip this from here. And if I were to place that right there, so it did some wonky things. In this case, because it's going from an eCatholic to an eCatholic site, it isn't as dramatic of a change, but you will notice that there are some differences. So if you were to just highlight all of that and then click on this little T with a subscript X, that's going to get rid of all of the weird formatting. Actually, it did a much better job than I thought it was going to of transferring all of that. So this was a kind of a bad example, but this T and subscript X will remove all of that superfluous formatting that what we want. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
If we copy and paste that, is that bad for you, or do you, like, sometimes I'll copy and paste it from something that I want, even if it
So
has nothing to do.
yeah, so because we use an intermediary system, Airtable, to harvest all of that information, it clears out a lot of that formatting for me. But I have a general practice of just wiping all the formatting and applying our styles. Yeah, so don't worry about it. Yeah. But because this site is, because y'all have a lot of power to produce your own stuff, that's why I kind of wanted to talk about that process. But the bulletin's fine as it is. So one of the things that I also kind of wanted to talk about in this case is, so if you click on this little source button right here, it's going to pull up this this code block, if you will. I just kind of wanted to talk about some of those the things that you'll see in here that make eCatholic work the way that it does. So there are things called tags that are denoted by these carets, these left and right carets. So you see that I highlighted this H2 here. So that is a heading 2 tag. And so whenever eCatholic encounters one of those tags, it's going to apply the aesthetics for that style. And things are going to appear a particular way. So that you see that it's a serif font here versus a sans serif font. It's also bigger versus your body text. So I bring all of that up to just kind of pull back the curtain a little bit. And if you encounter weird things that are happening, like if you want something to just appear as a regular text module or a block of text, but it's appearing weird, you might want to take a brief look into into this area and see if there are any like tags that are not where they should be. It's a very technical thing, but it's kind of a muscle that you can develop. If you just start looking for those and getting rid of it, it could help kind of standardize things for you. So now if you need to change things to be a header or whatnot, you can do that from these paragraph styles right here. So those are fair game. That's great. Again, I would I would implore you to stay away from this size menu. Um, yeah, and once we switch our site over to our normal domain, you'll be able to use that new accessibility tool to change things on the back end. That tool is specific to our domain, so that's why it's not going to show up. because we're using this hidden domain to make these edits to our site right now. But come November 20th, you'll even be able to see things. So if you need those tools to manipulate the site on your end, they soon will be available to you as well.
Side before you delete in your content.
Sorry.
See, what's that?
Oh, this little thing. So I use a writing aid called Grammarly, to help me just write better. I do, yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, so that's the thing that I have. Grammarly is free. It's super helpful for me, in terms of just, yeah, right. There are some changes, and I use the free version. So if I were to pay for it, I could get some of these things that I don't agree with to stop registering as errors. But I don't need that right now. But yeah, so that you won't see that on your end unless you have Grammarly installed on your computer. Cool. Any questions about basic modules? Yeah.
So like, what if I wanted a 2-column on the page?
So then you would need to move over to the sections layout. Yep, which we will get into some of those in a little bit. Yep. Cool. Nothing else? Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and switch that. I'm actually gonna stop messing with this secure page because there are things that I just can't do on secure pages apparently. Yeah, you'll see that if you remember when I tried adding content to that other page, a lot of these modules were grayed out. You can't add some of those to secure pages, so just keep that in mind. So we're going to switch this over to a sections layout. It did its magic, so you see that right-hand navigation menu disappeared. That is your key indicator. So whenever you're starting with a blank page, the first thing you need to do is to add your first section. So you'll just click on that little plus, and it pulls out your options here. So I'm going to kind of briefly go through each one of these. You have headlines, which is a great way to put like create a similar feel to like our home page where you have that big image with text on top of it. You can add the aesthetics of that to your page, but just keep in mind it won't cycle through options or slides. That's only available on your home page. But if you need this big welcome, this big dynamic welcome, your headline is where you do that. And you have some great options to kind of make that functional for you. If you think about back when we were doing the mini ministry fairs, all of those individual ministry areas were created with this headline section because you have such great flexibility. So you can have everything right justified, center justified. You don't have to have a title if you don't want, or you can just have a button. So it's just a matter of kind of clicking through these buttons and testing out what you want. You can have it with an image or not with an image. And you can also have styling in there as well. Different sub styling. So yeah, that's how that goes. And then in terms of adding images, it's the same upload process. So you just upload a file, or if we already have that file in there, you can go to it through that interface as well. You'll notice that there are folders here on the right-hand side. If you ever need a folder created for you, just let me know, because I can do that to help you organize your pictures here a little bit better. So yeah, that could be a helpful tool. Also, if you uploaded an image fairly recently, you can click on this last modified button here, and it's going to reorganize everything so that the latest image that was uploaded appears first, because it is usually, excuse me, set to file name, and so therefore you'd have to excuse me, you'd have to sort through all those to find what you're looking for. Okay, so that's the headline section. While I have this section, one of the things that you may or may not know is you'll see that when you hover over that section, there's this little plus button that appears. There's also one at the bottom. So depending on which one you click on, that's where it's going to add the new section. So if you want a section to appear above this current one, you click on the plus button on top. If you want it to appear below, then you click on the one at the bottom. So that can cut out a step for you. So then you have rows. So rows are very similar to columns. The main difference is that rows are going to have are going to limit you to just one module per area within that. So you see that you have one module, two module, three modules. So yeah, you're limited to only one module per column in this case. And then also rows allow the eCatholic system to apply some very specialized settings. So that ministry pathway that I showed you at the beginning of the conversation, it's built off of the rows module or section. So keep that in mind. Columns allow multiple modules to be stacked up on top of each other in that in all of those different columns. So does that make sense? Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to create this two module section right here. And you see that there's these dotted lines here. So you go to your content tray and drag and drop. Now, when I try to do that again, you see that there's a red line there. So that says that I can only do one module per column. So I can drop it here if I wanted to.
And it's going to have a sign up on the right.
Mm-hmm. If you wanted to, yep. So while I'm here, you'll see that there's, again, the title and subtitle buttons. Those are available on each of the sections. So if you needed to kind of call out what kind of content or copy is lies within that section, you can do that with those buttons. Just keep in mind, unlike the text module here, like the subtitle appears on top of the title versus your modules, they appear below. So just keep in mind that there are some differences. When you're dealing with rows and columns, you can, once you add your section, you can change the number of columns that you need. So if you decide later on that you end up needing a third column there, you can do that. You don't have to necessarily create a new section and drag things around. So while I'm here, we might as well talk about some of these things. So under styling, you have this drop-down menu. You have a couple of options here at the top where you can add like a white overlay, and you can add an image. So that white overlay will kind of make the image a little cloudy. So that's where that styling happens. You have also a blue background that you can use that applies our dark blue. And it turns all the text to a lighter color. We also have this left gray. So it'll have this is not our current logo. We're still working on editing that. But if you wanted some contrast there. We also have the gold background with this white inset here available. And then we have our ministry selector. We're not going to go into that too much, but that's basically what we have on our new homepage. Which I guess you can't see here. So this is what they refer to as the ministry selector. So I'll have to work with you one-on-one on creating that, but we can have those on internal pages if you want. Yeah. And then that brings us to that handy testimonials as well. So this is This is that testimonial section here. So again, there's some special coding that we're going to have to I'll walk you through. And it's not so much coding, actually. In this case, it's actually as easy as copy and pasting. But I guess I do want to warn you that when you are on our homepage, or when you are on a page that has those sections, this is how things are going to appear. So you see that each one of those options on the selector comes out looking, so you see that there's masses, families. On the front end, they're going to kind of cycle through as people select. But when you're dealing with it on the back end, they all appear as separate layouts. So it's a matter of us copying and pasting these little sub modules. Again, I'll walk you through that process. And then, but the testimonials are very similar to that. So they're going to appear in layers on the back end. But once we get to the front end, people will be able to cycle through those like that. Yeah, I know. It was a great conversation. Okay, so we were here under new page. And then Event Finder, that is going to be, we're going to talk about that when we get to using Ministry Platform, because there's some coding in there that they helped us insert, so that way we can use the tools that Ministry Platform offers. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the ministry path. So that nifty little timeline that I showed you earlier that I unfortunately can't get to right now because I'm set as a publisher. That's how you do that. And again, I'll walk you through each one of ministry pathway or ministry path. So 0 refers to the introduction that would be at the very top, so the text is centered, and then path 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the steps that appear. No, you can actually go multiple. So 4 and 1 are going to loop. So if you need a fifth step, you would cycle back to 1. So basically they had to break it out because there's a gradient that travels through those 4. So yeah, the next one will pick up where 4 leaves off. Yep. Yeah. So there's that. I mentioned adding a background to your sections. That's done here under the design. You can also apply additional text. So that applies a centered area. Not so much centered, it more so spans, the 3 columns that are down below. So that's that toggle. You can also set on a row, you can set fixed heights if you need to. So if it's auto, it's just going to continue to make the section taller as the content fills the area. But if you need it to take up a specific height, no, that's set by the overall style sheets. Yeah, okay. And then I talked about layout already. I'm changing between those two. Okay, so that's row. Columns. Again, you can stack multiple modules on top of each other in when you're dealing with column sections. So you see that went on top of each other. Because of the nature of that stacking, you don't have as much like customization. Like you see that we can't add a background image and things like that. So do keep in mind that that is limited to your rows. But in the layouts area, you can change how those lay out. Okay. Buttons. So you can select, we can have buttons there. Our buttons now take up the entire space. that we have. On our current site, we have we're constrained to these little white boxes. So this is, we can just draw people more into the visual aspects of our website, which I think is pretty cool. So we have some more layout options here. Let me see. Okay, so here's an example of those full width buttons that we have. So if there's no image that is uploaded, it's going to apply just our standard watermark of our icon. So keep that in mind, or you can upload specific images like you see on our homepage. So here's actually, this might be a good, I don't have editing access to this page. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, the blue background, which adds this bar, this dark blue bar at the top. Again, you have the gray logo, things like that. I wouldn't honestly mess with these too much. These alternate buttons, this alternate button styling applies this gray overlay and the button that you see here. So this is a two up button. So that's available to you on internal pages as well. I'm sorry. So, yeah, so these are both button modules here, but this is the alternate two. So it applies a full, well, a half image and then this overlay here, versus these ones that you see below. Okay. Well, we've already talked about those. I don't want to edit that page. Let's go back to our new page that we're manipulating. Okay, so we've been going through buttons, grids. Grids apply different layouts to the section. You have these smaller modules or module areas here. I like it in theory. I didn't ask for this. This is kind of an eCatholic wide option. I kind of find them super constraining because similar to the rows, you can only have one module per area. So keep that in mind. I've seen the diocese use these pretty creatively, especially the Hispanic ministry office. So if you want to see some examples of how they could be used, I would say check that out. Yeah, I honestly don't use them all that often. Mm. Mhm. Yeah, you could add image modules to all of those. That could be cool. Yeah. Um, yeah, it will. You can have text that extends past those little module areas, but there'll be a scroll bar there that you have to deal with. So, yeah. Yeah. So then you have a side-by-side module here that applies a bigger image right next to text. So that's available to you. Use that as you will. That's not anything new. And then our tabs and accordion. We worked with them to have these be a little more integrated into the site. When we were talking at the beginning of this whole process, we talked about this potentially being kind of a sub menu, if you will. Do keep in mind, though, that this area here is also limited to just one module per area. Mhm. Yeah, you are kind of limited to that. But it is there to help kind of segment information. I use the accordion quite often for like FAQs rather than having answers displayed all the time. If they were to go to like here facilities, let's go to facility access. So here you have an example of like FAQs. So once I click on it, it expands. The reason why accordion and tabs are in the same section is because when you look at it on a mobile device, all tabs are translated into the accordion visual layout. So yeah, those are there. And then news and events are pretty standard to how we use them now. So I don't think we need to spend the last few minutes on that. So at this point, really, it's just kind of testing things out, seeing how it works. Talk to me if you want to implement those ministry pathway modules, and I can show you how to do that. I will record a specialized video to walk you through that process. So that way you don't have to kind of sit through this whole thing. And to be quite honest, I was trained on this new website 30 minutes before you were. So I'm still learning a lot of this. So this is much more unscripted than our word conversation last week. But there are a lot of cool tools, and we have the next week and a half to kind of learn, at least start to learn how these work and develop some good practices. I think I kind of want to just close on a couple of just general big practices. One of the things that we've been finding good success with is on pages, especially pages that outline detailed processes or things like that. I would always suggest adding a people module and inserting yourself as a person. So you can do that by using a column or a row, it doesn't matter because you would really only just be doing one. Dragging and dropping this people module. And I usually put need help, contact me, or I'm here to help. Just leave it there. You click on this little +1 person and you'll see our entire staff listed here. And you just click add to page, done. And then that way it adds the image, name, person's title, and then also all of their contact information. So yeah, you don't have to do that time and time again. Yes, and my goal is to actually get pictures of all of our ministry leaders as well, to be as standard as ours. I'm giving you a heads up now. We are talking about redoing headshots. So prepare yourselves. I will give you a couple weeks notice. Yeah.
Say it ain't so.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's been a few years. So yes, I did want to give you that heads up. And we are going to be doing those for ministry leaders as well. Yeah. Mhm. I think because in terms of our general public, they kind of see us at equal levels. So we need to be able to put them in front of people just as much as we are as staff. So yeah, we'll be working on that. So that's what I wanted to say about your pages. Again, I'm not going to make it a hard and fast rule, but um, it is helpful. Okay, one other thing that I've been kind of noticing is just I kind of wanted to talk about hyperlinks. So if you needed to add a hyperlink to your text, to your copy or your content, you can do so I'm using a text module here. I would suggest that you write out your text as you need, as you want it to appear in the on the front end of the hyperlink. You highlight your word or words, and you click on this little link button, and it's going to automatically input the display text as what you highlighted. Okay, this is the important part, especially while we're talking about this time where we're transitioning to a new site. If you're sending somebody to a page within our website that an internal page on our website, make sure the link type is set to internal. And then you select your page from the drop-down menu. You can scroll to your heart's content, or if you start typing, it'll start recognizing your keystrokes and it'll bring you to the page that you're looking for, as long as the navigation name matches what you're typing. So keep that in mind. The reason why this is super important is because it applies the alias to this URL. You see that stmaustin.org is not visible. You don't see the 600.sites.ecatholic. So it makes the transition happen. So if you were to copy and paste stmaustin.org/the bulletin into this, it would appear as if the link is broken, because or it would actually take you to our current site. And conversely, if you were to put 600 sites eCatholic in there, when we switch to the new site, your visitors are going to get a 404 error because it's sending them to this hidden page. So it's really important to use that internal and external difference. So yeah, please try to adopt that practice. When you do external sites, external pages, that's when you can copy and paste the URL in its entirety into that box. Also, it's automatically going to do this for you, but it's always best practice to have external links open in a new tab. So that way, if somebody needed to get back to our site, it's as easy as going to the previous tab. Excuse me. This is especially helpful when you're when people are interfacing with resource pages. If you're sending people out to all of these different ministries, it's just easier to have that home base that people can come back to. So it's automatically going to set that when you use external. I'm just saying that to encourage you not to change that. And then if you want it to look like a fancy button, that's when this link style drop-down menu comes into play. Oh, I had to actually. Okay, yes, I know. I'm going to change that to this and hit OK. And you see that now the text is in this little pill. And when you hover over it, it changes colors and whatnot. So that is under the link style. Yeah. And there are two options. There's a red one and a blue one. So if you need to alternate colors, you can do that as well. If you need to add multiple links to a line, okay, stop that. What I would suggest is you add those links. You type out what you need. Hyper 2. I would just type all of it out before you actually go through the process of making them, because it's just harder to apply the text. So once you have them where you need them, then you go through that process. Oh, I forgot to. And it's especially this is especially pertinent for using the button styles. I'm going to change that to news. And actually, I wanted that to be button 2. So, and I would alternate colors as you go across, so that way people can differentiate those. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, pull quotes. There's also now these cool stylings for pull quotes. So if you were to highlight the text and click on the little quote button, it's going to apply this handy little quotation mark and change the styling. So this is another way to help add, yeah, testimonials, wisdom of the saints, what have you, just to help break up and segment your information. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to, I will send you a link to this page, to our site as it is, once I get back to my desk, and you are free to make edits as you need. Um, um, yeah, yeah, of course. So on that, I guess on that note, two options that you have available to you. Yes, you can create a whole new page. And I would do that if you really want to like really start from scratch. But if you want to use a lot of the content that you already have on there, I would just copy the page. So if you remember, card. If you remember, there's this copy page. I would do that, so that way you have you have something that you can revert back to. But also at the same time, you can make changes. You can publish that page if you want to, so that you can see it on the front end and test things, which I would highly suggest you do. So yeah, you can go about it both of those ways. I think I would be more inclined to copy the page, make the changes, and then I can teach you how to basically make a swap of those two pages. So that way we can get rid of that old page and launch that new refreshed one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, cool. They do like buttons. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like the button option because sometimes you just go, for more information, click here. It's just click here and you have where you're going. I like the button.
Yeah. Yeah. And with buttons, I would say, so across the board, the thing is we want to be as short as possible. And with buttons, just keep in mind you don't need to say click here.
Yeah.
Because the button itself implies to click there. So just say sign up now. So yeah, keep that in mind as you're going through that.
On that catchy little phrase. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do it here.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? I know. Yep. Um, and I am readily available. You have my little scheduling tool to set up a time if you want to kind of prepare some things ahead of time. You can definitely schedule those. And if you need it again, just let me know. I'll send it your way. The other thing that I'm actually going to do today when I leave is we actually have a team, a website team on Microsoft Teams, where we are going to start posting the tutorials that I've been recording and things like that. But this is also a great place to kind of dialogue across like multiple people. So if you want to put out there, hey, I'm running into this issue, is anybody else? You can have that dialogue with each other, and to share best practices, in the event that you don't want to wait to schedule a meeting or something like that. So I have a future one of these conversations on Teams where we'll talk about some of those functions, but I will add you to that website team so we can start dialoguing that way too. Otherwise, emails are always available.
With you on the font.
Yeah.
Do I just go back to your other?
Or do you want me to do it? Are you available right after this? Because I feel bad for ducking out on that one. Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all go. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for coming and best